toujours pas de souris, hein. Moi je sais pas. Ah. Ah. I can't. Okay, I'm gonna deal. You know. So to illustrate my no, okay, the legal and institutional landscape. The legal landscape is this. Okay, this is the all the norms, and this is the basic one. I'm not talking about insurance law, for instance. Uh, the basic norms and standards. Can you? Okay, because otherwise I'm gonna problem at one point. So you have to differentiate because between specific sectoral laws and regulations, specifically applicable because it is governing electricity supply, electricity generation, electricity development, renewable. Sometimes you have legal tax, setting out principle, norms, and standards in renewable energy. Sometimes you don't. But beside this, you have corporate law, you have labor law, you recruit people, you have urban law, land law, which is very interesting because in this particular project, this is on the water. So, a lot of islands, and, Mrs. Ephraim, underline it, meaning you have small territory. So land law is crucial for any investment and infrastructure projects. Now you have, the sea. Okay, so law of the sea. What is the sovereignty of, island over, is littoral, is like is territory, the seabed, the space. Okay, so usually you have the economic exclusive zone, which is like 200 miles, maritime miles, which is approximately 370 kilometers, which, you don't have that between the islands. So, meaning you have like some limits, boundaries between the islands, which have been negotiated, okay? But it's, because of the proximity, when you're going to install and develop infrastructure, whatever they are, they necessarily have an impact on your neighbor. Okay, so that's why these projects are necessarily regional. So environmental law, PPPs, are we including private sector participation? If you have private sector participation, it's called, they have to make contractual arrangement with the public authorities. You're talking about, like sovereignty on the sea, so it's public. It's not public land, but it's public space. And therefore, you need to have like this kind of arrangement with the private sector. You also have, but we can see it later on, arrangement with the private sector for developing within a same structure, corporate structure, these kind of project. So, in terms of institutional framework, this is kind of standard, but you have like on one side, you have the public one. So all the ministries and agencies which are concerned. In some countries, you have a very strong decentralized administrative system whereby the collectivities, the city, municipalities are in charge of their space, their zone, and they have some authority to provide, deliver permits and authorization. And sometimes it's difficult because they're not necessarily knowledgeable enough or skillful to assess, the way to which extent they can deliver this permit, they can assess the demand and the consequences, the implication of it. But what you understand is that, what you should be aware of is you have a lot of stakeholders, administrative ones, or I mean, public ones or from private, society, such as the NGOs, such as the users. Sometimes they're organized within association. The citizens, in some places, citizens can claim and can, sue an authority if they don't comply with the law on coastal zone or, things like that. And the economic actors, they are nonetheless the developers, the people who own the technology and want to develop, the industrial people, other, the hotels or other industry, there would be the recipient, the customers of these infrastructure. So you see that you have a myriad of a lot of actors, and basically this kind of project, one of the key success factor is the adhesion of all the stakeholders to the same project, which means that you need a lot of consultation, a lot of consultation, a lot of negotiation, a lot of explanation. You have the level of acceptability of the population concern that, to fishermen or others, that this is something that it would not be impacted negatively, but they could benefit from it. And that's a lot of work, okay? So a little idea of the institutional framework in the Caribbean, CARICOM. And so we try to identify, this is a CARICOM actually slide. We're prepared in 2020. And you see that at least at the public level, you have many agencies concerned. Sometimes they're not, how do you say, they don't have the necessary skill to address this. So you need also not only to identify them, to understand what are the missions and responsibilities, but also try to understand if they have the technical skills or level experience to assess and develop this kind of project. So you have, when we talk about training, it's not only, it's the population or consultation, it's also involving all these public institutions to, to have like a fructuous dialogue and that they understand what you're talking about. So what are the issues? Emerging sector. Emerging sector is when it's new, the law is not there because the law cannot treat something that doesn't exist. So regulation and legal aspect always come a posteriori, okay? So they cannot, so it's not there. So the big issue for the regulator is to understand, once again, what are the consequences, what are the stakes, what are the implications, and sometimes you can, gear toward what we could call the co-regulation, meaning if it's not in law, it has to be somewhere. So you can maybe build on a contract, and then afterwards trying, to legislate, regulate afterwards. Meaning you put it in the contract, and if it works, first of all, in the contract you can, you're flexible. Okay, this contract will be for a long time, long-term contract. It's not a 5-year contract, it's like 10, 15, 20, 30 years, right? So the idea is that you should be able to have like the provision in your contract that allow you to adjust, when you go further in the development of the project, so to make sure to address the issue of compliance, the issue of, allocational risk, all these themes that are very important. So one of the main difficulties right now is that the law is not adapted because it's a new sector, it's a new technology, and there are some implications that we don't even know and that we'll be knowing it when we were doing it. So you have a kind of empirical, approach to adapt, to make sure that, these serve, the interest of the people, because this is the ultimate goal, improve the life, the quality of life of the people with cheap, quality, sustainable service, energy service. okay, and addressing at the same time all the issues of climate change and the terrible impact that it has on our small and islands. Public institutions, they're too much. They're too much at the local level, meaning at the state level, at the regional European level. I bet anyone here who will try to identify or like very bright students here to try to get into EU site and to see which agency is responsible for what, and where you should address your request for. This is very difficult. So that's been raised by many many people. I mean, many governments, they're aware of that. And the French government, they promised to reduce the level of permits and the interaction and relationship between the different agencies to make it faster, to fast process, because we in a hurry, okay, on some like climate change issues. So that's something that it's could be nightmarish, but it's true that it impacts the implementation of this kind of project. And maybe this afternoon it would be interesting to see where we can have like kind of regional cooperation for and have like one head or one main agency which could be dealing with a lot of issue and gathering, coordinating, because otherwise it's complicated and it's not very productive. So that's something, so that's for me the main issues and challenges in terms of legal aspects and institutional aspects. So, sorry, I didn't translate it, but I would show you. I don't have a pointer here. You don't have a pointer? No. Okay. Huh? Well, let's see. So here, okay. Oh, sorry. Should I climb on the chair to show you? Okay, so this is the main actor, okay, in the project. This is a project company, which is called SPC, SPV, Specific Purpose Vehicle, meaning it's a corporation which is specifically incorporated, created to implement the project, to develop it, to implement the project. So who is part of this project? You have you have public actors, you have private actors. Among the public actors, you have, of course, the government. You could have, the utility, the public utility company, the different agencies in terms of, like environment, and everything, and on the private sector. So, acteur public, on the left is all, public authorities, and they're rolled into the project. Private sector is the lenders, the donors, the private investors, and they are developing loan contract, and they have requirements for disbursement. Okay, these people are going to do due diligence to see if everything is in compliance with applicable law. And you have the construction. You have to construct, to build the installation and equipment necessary. You may need to lease the place. So you're not leasing the place in the sea, right? But you're gonna have an authorization, a permit, and you certainly is gonna have like some contractual arrangement with the public, authorities, and you need equipment, and meaning equipment. Sometimes you need people to provide and to guarantee that this equipment is going to be available for 5, 10, 20 years, whatever, and that at any time when you need maintenance or repair, you have the same equipment. So they have a commitment there and long-term agreement. You have the operator, the one who's going to operate the how do you call it? The plant. And so with the operation of the plant, you have also the maintenance. Okay? So maintenance is not insurance. Okay, maintenance is maintenance, meaning 10, 20 years, 25 years down the road, these people, I mean, the OM contractor will be liable to provide the maintenance services to make sure that this is operational. By the way, maintenance is crucial. You see a lot of people, especially in solar panels and industry, they're saying that the big thing here in the Caribbean, and talking about the representatives of the tourism industry, hotel industry, said, hey, we have solar panels, but nobody to maintain them. So 2 years, 3 years afterwards, it's not working, it's dysfunctional, it doesn't provide, the energy needed. And last but not the least, this is here what we can call the concession contract, or which is composed of the PPA, power purchase agreement, which is key to any energy project. Meaning, whenever developer is going to see a bank, he's going with 2 documents. He's going with land lease, if it's on land, and he's going with PPA. Because the PPA is like giving the lender some prospect, an idea of what would be the revenue of the plant. And so there are some guarantees. It's very, but out of all this, the PPA is crucial. This scheme is basic scheme. Of course, you can have, but represent more or less 40 contracts. And takes, minimum 5 years to take off the ground. So now we ending the conclusion for governance. I mean, we ending our presentation on governance issues. And Karim, who is my partner at Equa Consulting, who is also a law professor and a lawyer, will comment on this slide. Karim?
Yes, I'll be brief because this is something we will discuss this afternoon in one of the roundtables. The idea here is fairly simple. In fact, we believe that such kind of projects must be treated as an opportunity to develop participatory schemes. And the big question is, how flexible are we regarding participatory schemes, regarding the special purpose company? The heterogeneity of the local frameworks is a problem almost everywhere, except there. There we found enough rooms pretty much everywhere to come up with schemes that could resemble each other across islands, okay? And that's something which we find very important because, of course, we believe in developing such kind of schemes, but also because we have there some room for implicit, informal harmonization of practices across island. But this is something we're going to discuss this afternoon, that harmonization through the sharing of best practices. The idea is now it is possible to involve users and the civil society in such projects. The most complicated zone until recently was the French-speaking islands, because in France you have a very strong, by legal tradition, we have a strong delineation between public and private. But the French have crossed that, and they have decided to come up with a law that enables a participation of the users with schemes involving municipalities and economic operators. So now we have in the French-speaking zone pretty much the same possibility that those available in the English-speaking zone. This means that we have nice rooms to exchange best practices. I'll stop here because this is something we're going to discuss at length this afternoon. That includes, by the way, something I'm going to discuss with my colleague David here. Participatory scheme is something everybody talks about, but in practice we need to know how to do it. And this means that we need to come up with proper training programs so that people actually master the tools. Okay, but this is something we'll discuss this afternoon. Thank you very much.
Okay.
So now the next aspect, with the last aspect of the presentation, our conclusion, our study is the economic one, and it's going to be presented by Corinne Dubois, CEO of EMD.
Yes, or we could say ice here. Ice is good when it's warm.
Ice.
Okay. So I will present the economics aspects. First, because economy is not only money. I will speak about all the economics beyond the money aspects. We will speak about employment, so education and training. We will speak about circular economy, and we will speak about resilience, because we are now in a time where resilience is very important, especially for small countries. And then after we will speak, of course, about money. So with the business model of the SPV, we have seen the contractual model of the SPV. Now we will see the economics of the SPV and the principles of balance for the type of SPV, which is a multi-stakeholders SPV, in which several types of stakeholders can enter in the company. So first, the economics. So here you see the value chain of marine energies. We call them ocean energies because it is from ocean more than, it doesn't include the offshore wind, what we call. And we have the preliminary studies which require research and development, conception of the equipment, development studies, in which development studies, as we were talking about with the young ladies, we find environmental impact assessment, which is biology, which is ecology, which is chemistry. So we have several fields of knowledge inside this preliminary study field. And then after, we deal with construction and installation, in which, as I was saying before, you can see all the mechanical engineering, so the welding, assembly, polymers work, composites work, and also one very important thing is the naval electricity, so the works of electricity inside a naval environment, so a marine environment. We will see marine junction, control command, telecom. We have many different skills that are needed. And then after the classical one, electrical substation and submarine cables, drilling and seabed preparation inside the water, transportation. So because the site is at sea, so we will need boats to transport the systems, assembling, installation, cabling, and junction. They have classical technical fields. For the operation, so this construction and installation, the duration is, let's say, less than 6 months. It depends, of course, of the size of the equipment, but saying less than 6 months. The permitting approach, to give an idea, it's let's say 2 years 1 year and a half, 2 years for the studies, and then it depends on the administrative approaches, what is required. But the operation is 20 years. And in this operation, we have, of course, the storage and distribution and the storage of the spare parts of the equipment and so on. So you have to deal with the equipment pieces. The distribution, supervision, and optimization of the operation of the plant. And maybe around this could be, after a while, the hydrogen and precious storage and desalination that can be also accumulated around the dedicated process. What I wanted to highlight is that this operation, and the maintenance, which is just after, that is during 20, 25 years. So this is long time work for local employment. So you will have the preventive maintenance and the curative maintenance, dismantling and recycling, because we include in the system the recycling process. We include in the cost and in the system all the dismantling of the plant, but also the recycling of the materials, and you will see just after why. So this means basically that we need people to do that, and we need people knowing how to do that, meaning workforce and knowledge during 25 years for each plant. So that leads to circular economy. So circular economy, it's materials, but it's also on the process for electricity. When you work for electricity, you work in a big cycle. If you are at the level of the territorial authorities and communities, so you are also consumer of electricity. So you will win money if you are included in the company. You will win money by auto-producing your own electricity, and you will better manage the price of your electricity on the long run. So you will invest in the projects. You will get employment for the people of the communities, and you will get also taxes and levies on the works and on the company that is here. So this is the, let's say, virtuous cycle for the territorial authorities, for the private companies that are included in the process. And when I say private companies, that's consumer. If you include electricity consumers as fisheries with fridges and so on, let's say, if they invest in the project, so they will create employment also. They will work on the sustainability of their activities, the companies, and that can be seaports also, because seaports also consume electricity. So they can be included in the company also. So they are the consumer of the electricity of the project in which they are, okay? And so they win money by auto-producing their own electricity that they can then after invest in other projects, or in their projects at least for the future. That's the circular economy at the level of territorial authorities and private companies, so at the level of the stakeholders. But you have also the circular economy at the level of the material, so what is included in the plant, in the process. So the equipment, I am just looking where is the beginning of the cycle that has changed. Yes, the recycling. We integrate the material recycling level at the beginning when we perform the concept design of the installation. And what we want to do is to, let's say, get this idea of manufacturing the equipment, not only the equipment, what is outside the equipment, the assembling of the equipment. We can do it also on a local point of view, but also at the Caribbean point of view. So meaning the equipment can be assembled in one island for a project being in another island if the facilities of this other island is not big enough or not adequate for this project. And this other island will benefit of the project anyway because they will have the projects and the electricity. The equipment manufactured with high proportion of recycled material because they are, mechanics. These equipments are mechanics, most of them. And we can recycle at the level also of Caribbean countries. So not only inside one island. This concept of recycling needs a certain amount of material to be recycled so that to be cost effective. So that also can be seen at the level of the Caribbean countries. Then also the work and construction by local people first and Caribbean people if you don't find the people on site. The same for the operation. And we, let's say, think about this continuous material dismantling and recycling in the process of this material circular economy. That's one very important point for the future and for the future, long-term future, not only, 20 years. 20 years is not enough for these young ladies here. Mm-hmm. Let's speak about resilience. I do not speak always about it, but this is 6 points that has been taken as 6 very important points for the resilience of a territory. So the first one is taking safety precaution for the future. We will face very difficult events in the future. We all know that. We don't speak a lot about it. We know that these ladies will face the material scarcity, about aluminum, about copper, steel, concrete, sand also, we know it, and oil. So we take it into account in the way we develop the projects. So taking safety precautions, that means multiply the types of electricity production, not only one type. Because one event, one climate event may destroy this type of electricity production, it will not destroy the other. Okay? So that's one thing. Put barriers. So to controlling electricity prices, we have seen during the crisis in Ukraine that the electricity prices, at least in France, also in other countries, have reached a level that was really impossible to imagine before, multiplied by 5 for some days, and some municipalities had to cancel and to stop the buses for the schools, for example, because the budget was not enough, because of the electricity budget was increasing. So this is very important to control these electricity prices for the future. To inform, that's what we are doing now. So with Interreg Caribbean, the dissemination and publication of what is possible. Redundancy, multiply the number of electricity production sites this time. Not only type, but sites. Not everything at the same place, so that to be able to switch from the one to the other. To create networks, that's also what we are doing now. Mutualization and solidarity between islands, or between several towns inside an island. and efficient use and sobriety for the electricity, meaning to build closer to the consumer. That's why we highlight the auto consumption and auto production when it is possible in the regulatory framework, because it's not always possible. So in brief, broaden the base to keep the balance. That means that we have to multiply the sources, and that's what we do when it moves. You just broaden the base, and that's what we need to do. And furthermore, we need to do it more when we are small. So let's speak about money now. What is the SPV model? So Monique was speaking about the contractual point of view for these special purpose vehicles. Mainly, what we say that it is possible to have one or several one of these stakeholders inside the capital of this company. So they invest all. The professional developers, they invest in the SPV. The territorial authorities and communities, they can also invest in the SPVs. That can be nature, that can be, let's say, the land, for example. Even the land is something that is an investment for the SPV. We can have crowdfunding. We can have industrial companies or workshop auto-consuming the electricity that is provided here. We can have electrical company, of course. First, I should have said, we begin with the electrical companies because that's their purpose to provide electricity. So, of course, they are part of the SPV if they want. And maybe other type of user, just like seaport. We were speaking about seaport infrastructure. They need electricity also. So all these people, they can go inside the same company that will provide electricity to everyone. So they will provide electricity for themselves, in fact. So when we see that, we see that all these stakeholders, they don't have the same interest in the company. So they don't look after the same thing. And we have to take it into account because each one of them does not work the same way in the brain, So I wanted to highlight the electricity consumer putting money in the SPV. They want to keep the sale price low because they are the consumer of the electricity. So they want the sale price of the kilowatt hour to be low. And they want to ensure the long term because they don't want to change the provider next year. So they will look at that. The companies and stakeholders of the value chain that we have seen, they ensure the long-term sustainable because they want their market to be long. And they keep cost fair and as local as possible because they want to work as long-term point of view. So that's their purpose in the company. The electricity producer want to ensure that projects are balanced, bankable, and sustainable, of course, because they are companies. So they want it to be balanced and on a bankable point of view that they can put the money, and ensure that the plant operates over the long term because they invest for the long term. That's not for today only. And the public authorities, of course, they want the compliance with regulations, so they will check all of that. And they want to ensure the benefits for the community and the citizens, so they will take care about the benefit of everyone. Okay, so what is let's say, the usual purpose of the economy is to balance the cost and the financing for these projects. So we will have the development and construction costs, meaning the capex for the ones that are in the system, the technical maintenance and operational costs, so meaning the OPEX, the finance and capital cost, because the money costs money. That's something that is sometimes difficult to imagine, but the money costs money. So we have to balance that for the finances with the criteria of financing. So the LCOE compared with the selling price, that is one of the levers that is evaluated by the finance. We will also take care about the depreciation duration versus the duration of the guarantees on the equipment and on the production that we can get. And we will also add, because the SPV is a commercial company, it has to be taken into account that we have a discount rate and a reasonable, acceptable margin for this SPV, which is a private company that has to last as long as possible. Okay, so now an example. This is only example to explain the leverage that the stakeholders will put on the business model. So if we have the first table at the top, it's an example. It's an heavy example, not so good, so that to not make you dream too much. So we take 1 megawatt, we take a capacity factor. The capacity factor is let's say, the efficiency of the system, of the plant, in front of a particular environment, a particular resource. We take the example of 4 kilometers, okay, because we have explained that if we put more, the cable being very, very costly, very, very expensive, this makes a big weight in the balance. We will take, let's say, a prudent capex of 7.5. This is very prudent. And we will imagine that we have a debt level, meaning half of the money comes from the bank, to be very simple for everyone. And with this, we come to a LCOE of 230 euro per megawatt hour, meaning 23 cents of euro per kilowatt hour. If you compare to the table at the beginning, we are less than what is the average of the Caribbean countries. But the selling price, the sale price, sorry, being, if we want to balance as IRR for the return rate of the company, if you want something, let's say, fair, not so good, but not so bad, you will have to sell 420 euro per megawatt hour. So some of the people, they will say this is not enough as return rate, so I want more as return rate, so I will have to sell at a higher price so that to get a return rate that is more satisfactory for the investors. That's a way to explain it. I take another example at the end. If you want really to downsize, to decrease the price of the electricity, the real price of electricity, which is the LCOE, the levelized cost of electricity, including dismantling and recycling and so on, you will have to get a better capacity factor. So you will have to get a better resource. It's finished. It's the last slide. So with this, if you want to remain at the same level of return, you can have let's say classical and middle size sale price with low LCOE. That's the idea. That's why we put a lot of high importance in the production assessment and in the evaluation of this capacity factor. That will be all, and we will go to the preliminary conclusions. Okay. Oops. Who is doing? No, that's you. Preliminary conclusions.
Okay, so thank you very much, Corinne, for these economic aspects. I hope that we're going to have a Q&A session after that. But prior to this, this is the conclusions that are being presented by Karim.
Okay, the conclusions are, the clear conclusions are here. First of all, in terms, from a technical point of view, the 4 areas that have been identified are pretty clear, okay? Antigua, Guadeloupe, Martinique, and St. Lucia. There is no discussion as to whether marine energies are or not a valuable addition to the current energy mix. And we got some positive response from local stakeholders regarding the specific interest of an energy source that doesn't involve land use, okay? So that's the technical part. Regarding logistics, our colleague has identified several possibilities in terms of harbors. So again, this is pretty much an open picture in that regard. And the purpose being to rely on local actors and know-how. There are several options available depending on the nature of the technology that's going to be used. As to regulation, as Monique pointed out this morning, there are important local variations. And as we all know, the prospects for former regional harmonizations are not very promising. In other words, if we expect a treaty regarding renewable energies in the Caribbean, this is not likely to happen anytime soon. We have here a minister that has 2 caps, in fact. You have this background in telecom industry and you have this current activity in the energy sector. You can compare both, in fact. Telecom is considered to be the only sector that justified, okay, coming up with some kind of global framework or regional framework, okay. What everybody says, and this is something I'd like you to confirm, what everybody says is, no matter how sad this is, renewable energies are not competing in the same league. In that regard, the political cost of achieving some kind of regional framework is something that is unlikely to be paid by all the local actors. That cost was justified for telecom. It is not yet justified for renewable energy. That's how people see it. And perhaps the Honorable Minister is going to confirm or complete that later. Regarding other ways to harmonize, it is promising, in fact. So although the prospects are not favorable regarding formal harmonization, we do have favorable prospects regarding informal harmonization. In other words, if we cannot come up with some joint rule that would apply to all of us, we can still, each of us, apply pretty much the same techniques and apply pretty much the same know-how so that we can exchange best practices, okay? So there are promising prospects regarding informal harmonization in terms of public-private models, governance, and of course training. Finally, regarding the governance, obviously this type of technology requires a more inclusive participatory scheme because there are new stakeholders involved, starting with the fishermen. In Guadeloupe, the fishermen was there, and they came to make sure that we're not stepping on their shoes. It's logical, okay? So you have to make sure that the concerns of additional stakeholders are alleviated as well when you use this kind of new technology. And again, we're talking about new options here in terms of organization, new options in terms of governance. If people don't know these options and if don't know what they entail, it's like if we had no option. So this means, again, training. So, to make a long story short, our main recommendations, we have two main recommendations, okay? The first is to use renewable energy to display a window that includes altogether innovative technologies, but also innovative participatory schemes, innovative governance, okay? Innovative logistics, and our second recommendation is to seek harmonization wherever possible. We're in an area, as you all know, we are here in an area where we have scarce human resources. We have to share them. How can we share that is something that can be done in many ways. Of course, we can have the same type of training, but we can also have regional expert units. And we believe that regional expert units are justified for the complex legal schemes that could be set, such as PPP schemes, meaning one unit, everybody keeps local regulations, so we don't discuss that. We're not going to argue on that matter because it is a bit premature to get there. But what we can still do is to have a group of experts that can be shared by all the players regionally. And that group of experts could be gathered regarding the two topics we have identified, which are the most obvious, which are PPP schemes, the complex legal schemes, legal and financial schemes, okay, that entail pricing issues, tariffs, and so forth. Another tricky area is the participatory schemes, which again might require a dedicated expertise somewhere that could be shared across the islands. So these are our main recommendations at this point of our pre-feasibility study. Thank you very much.
Yes, because I have to conclude about the next steps after. Okay, so let's speak about facts. What we will do now about the 4 pilot sites, so what is the roadmap, what we have still to do for the feasibility studies and complete the project development and go to the construction of this site, of these plants. We have to start the consultation with local people and communities. Some of them have already begun, so some are to be done yet. We have to confirm the natural resource through on-site measurement, because what you have seen is only the model, the meteorological mesoscale model that gives the point of view of the resource assessment we have until now. So we have the buoys, and we will put the buoys on first 2 sites and then the 2 other sites. We have to confirm the environmental highlighted aspects, so through a detailed diagnosis, so the environmental and social impact assessment I was speaking before. We have to investigate the regulatory framework regarding the permitting and the selling of the produced electricity. Is it possible? Through which process do we get the permit? For which process do we sell the electricity, or do we auto-consume the electricity? It will depend. We will investigate the technical and regulatory possibilities for the electricity grid connection. Electricity grid connection is a key issue, because it's about nothing if you produce electricity and you cannot connect. And then conduct the preliminary simulation of the cost of production, so that means the production assessment and the cost, the levelized cost of electricity that I have spoken just before. And to simulate also which business plan of marine renewable energy array we will have, including which governance modalities and including the possibilities of means and resources mutualization between the 4 projects. That's the idea. Between these 4 projects, we will try to make mutualization effect inside this project, as I described before. These 6 points are our roadmap for the 4 islands we have spoken about, so including Saint Lucia, Antigua, Martinique, and Guadeloupe. That's it, and that will be all. If you have questions, I don't know. Yes, there's the Q&A session. So if you have particular question on these points, you have one question here. Where is the microphone?
Thank you. Good day, everyone. My name is Steffi Alfred. I'm from the British High Commission. I am a trade and investment officer. I have a very simple question regarding timelines. So what does a time... Sorry. Oh, do I need to repeat? Oh. Steffi Alfred, British High Commission, Trade and Investment Officer. I have a question regarding timelines for your next steps. What does the timelines look like?
I don't know if the team want to answer. Just...
I can try to answer. If it depends, I have to say, I want to say, it depends of the interest of the people. It could go very fast. Maybe, I don't know, if St. Lucia authorities or Antigua authorities or whoever decided to go there, I think they have possibility to go in action more quickly than in France, because in France we know there is lots of... it's a big cake, a big cake with lots of levels, but so we imagine we can be faster in your territories. So it could be 3 years, between 3 to 5, I say, because we need time to have good impact studies regarding biodiversity and other things. Time to have and finance. So between
finance structuring
and after time to build, to prepare the construction, to build. So 3 years, I think it's not crazy. Yes. If everybody join the force all together. Mm-hmm. To the end of the project. Now to the next step. So
I don't know. I will answer on that. So it depends what you call the next step. If the next step is the construction or the installation of the equipment, we can say 3 years normally. If everyone is okay. The problem is to check that everyone is okay. That is this process. Each time we have to explain what it is, to perform the studies, to demonstrate the studies, to get the permitting, to get the financing, and so on. But basically, there are small equipment. You have seen 1 megawatt. If we put 1 megawatt, it can be, let's say, quicker than if we put 20 megawatt, of course. But our model is to put several of 1 megawatt better than one of 20. Yeah, because it will go quicker even.
Okay, I want to add something because, in the feasibility study, you have the technical aspect, economical, financial, environmental, social, and then legal. Okay, so the legal negotiation, contractual arrangement, who is paying what, who is liable for what, who is bearing the risk of what, takes a long time. Okay, and you have the insurance. So with all these aspects, will take some time. But the contractual arrangement and the final conclusion of all the guarantees, you have guarantees that are there, okay? You have, like public guarantees, you have, the donors going to step in and they can, like help, and subsidize your financial arrangement. So that could take a little bit longer. So you can add like 2-3 years depending on, political, willingness, and especially the willingness of the donors, of the different actors to, fasten the process. But still, this is when all these conditions are met, you still have to sign agreements. Okay, this is where you commit yourself. And you commit yourself for, not for 2 years, you commit yourself for 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, and then that could take a little longer. Okay.
Yeah. Good morning. Let me stand for those who might not be able to see me. Devon Gardner, Head of Technical Programs, Caribbean Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency. Apologies for my late arrival, Judith. 2 observations and maybe roll into questions, and good morning, Minister. The conclusions, I came in late, but of course I saw the conclusions very clear and vividly, and so my questions are based on the conclusions. There seemed to be a preoccupation with the sale of electricity. And so I wanted to understand whether or not that was the primary objective of the project, because in doing so, what that does is already limit your technology options and your technology selection. And I haven't seen much in respect to how you do the technology assessment and matching with respect to the resource. So by focusing and zeroing in on the regulations and laws for electricity and electricity sale, it sounds to me that you are already selecting your technologies, pre-selecting your technologies almost, because then that gives you a narrow window of technologies compared to others, if you are already talking about electricity production and sale. So just checking to see whether that's the case on the one hand, and linking it back to a principle that we are familiar with, especially for marine renewable technologies, is that you don't typically seek to match the community to the technology. But otherwise, the rule of thumb is to match the technology to the community. And so that leads to the second point, which is I haven't seen much around sector coupling opportunities. And, maybe you could expound on whether there is going to be intentions or opportunities to look at areas for sector coupling, especially if we are talking about resilience in this regard. Thanks.
I'm not sure to understand all the question, if you can. I understand that you would like to know how we select the equipment following the sites, or what we can get as participation. I'm not following everything. I did not hear a lot.
Can you recap a little bit, Devon?
I'll try to be slower and and more definitive in the line of questions. One, are we already saying that the objective is simply to feed electricity into the grid for the program? Are there opportunities and options to look at other purposes of the electricity that is being produced, such as power to X, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? That's the first question. It's really to understand whether the primary goal is to show or provide proof of concept that you are going to use marine wind excess to feed into the electricity grid and supplement the grid, or whether the opportunity could be to look at production of green fuels or other types of things that do not necessarily require you to integrate the project into the grid. So that's the first question.
Okay. So I will answer the first question first. So for the first question, it depends on the area. So we focus on a site where the resource is good. We choose the equipment following what is the environment of this particular site. We will speak with the local communities and the local, let's say, framework of industries and consumers and electricity providers, electricity companies, etc. And following what is the best for what is the most efficient for the electricity consumption of this equipment. So that means that that's not only, the idea is not only to sell electricity to the grid. The idea is to produce electricity for consumers. So that's why the consumer can be part of the project. That's what we say. But it's not always possible following the regulatory framework, and it's not always possible following the environment of the project.
Yeah. Somebody wants to react to, so I don't know. Okay, hold on. Minister is talking here.
Yes, I was so engrossed in the beginning, I didn't realize that my friend from CARICOM had actually joined us in the meeting. So that's a welcome addition. But the question that he asks is germane to the discussion, but I think it's more of some policy options at the government level to be able to determine if in truth and in fact we can produce cheaper electricity using marine resources, renewable energy. What purpose are we to, use it for? I think this basically is a technical evaluation of what is possible. And I think maybe perhaps some of the foundation information may have led to your question, the lack of foundation information, as an alternative to look at what are some of the other discussions. And you and I have been at IRENA, and we have been at CREF. So what are some of the other alternatives that are available for us in terms of technology options? And I think from my own standpoint, Minister of Energy, I like the fact that it is focusing on, it's bringing some thought leadership to the whole question of what we do in the marine environment, and purely as a study of, and what this is going to lead to, the conclusions that you've seen with the four areas that the feasibility study is going to be focused on. There is a next level of study that's going to bring us to the whole question of whether or not we have a bankable project. And for it to be bankable, what are the revenue streams that are going to support the investment? Whether or not they're going to come from a tie-in to the grid, or perhaps maybe a more futuristic approach of what you had mentioned. Can we use some of this cheap energy to create some supplemental green energy, be it hydrogen or whatever? So I don't think that those questions are necessarily contravening what we're discussing, but I think they're done later down the road for a policy decision at the level where I would have to answer those questions. Yeah?
Thank you very much, Mr. I think that somebody else wants to say something. Here it is. You introduce yourself.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Yes, it is afternoon. Fabian Lewis, Public Utilities Officer, Department of Energy and Public Utilities, Ministry of Infrastructure. As it refers to one of the options, right now, government policy as it stands, and we're currently reviewing our legislation. I can tell you all that the only option right now for a project of that size would be to feed into the grid. No one, other than Lucilec, is allowed to sell to the general public, electricity that is. It has to be fed into the grid. So for now, this is the direction that our government has taken, and it is within Lucilec's license for the next 20-something years. And that is how it will remain unless we want to find ourselves into some legal battle for licensing. So whatever decision that we're making, go forward with that in mind. Yeah?
I think this is pretty clear. Thank you very much for this clarification. Well noted, okay? So it's to the grid.
So that leads to the second question, which really is not necessarily at disagreements with what Terence has just said. Fabian has just said, sorry. The truth is that when I spoke to sector coupling opportunities, you could potentially, under law, produce electricity that is not necessarily being fed to the grid, even if it's 1 megawatt, for self-consumption, if it is that the self-consumption is, within the same ownership. Yes, exactly, for operations. And so if there's a sector-coupled effort that is linked to, say, an industry that is offshore, that is then the off-taker, then that would not contravene the law. So that's why I asked the question about sector coupling as the follow-up. Thanks.
And which is why I said to you, that's beyond the scope of what they can do.
Okay, so it's very nice because we see how it is different from one country to the other, and that's why we have to adapt. That's why we have to fit with the regulatory of each one and do it. But you're right, might be some companies with a 1 megawatt consumption at peak. So.
No, it's only I was just confirming that at a policy level, and indeed the question you speak about, it sets up some possibilities for some discrete industries to be formed around the cheaper costs of producing energy. Because when we started this discussion this morning, I think it was you, Monique, who pointed out that the Caribbean region supports the highest cost of energy anywhere in the world. And so that just precludes us from being able to attract any other type of industry other than the service-based, land-based economies that we have. So you are correct, indeed, it sets up that possibility, but I don't think it's within the scope of what the thought leadership that they're bringing here at this point in time.
Thank you very much. I think the lady over there, what's the name? I forgot, sorry, but Mrs. Professor here.
Not quite. Hi, my question was regard to finance, actually. One of your slides, you mentioned the internal rate of return was, I think, about 11%. And I was just wondering, well, I actually have two questions. So what is your required rate of return? I don't think you mentioned that. I think you kind of looped us back into what I think the capacity factor that you could change to get to that 11%. But is there a ballpark number that you guys maybe decide upon, or would that change based on funding? I know you mentioned 50% debt. Is your fund the other half coming from particular investors, or I don't know. I'm just wondering what discussions you had around that.
That's a big deal, this question. In fact, so you have to ask to the financial guys each time, and it changes also following the year, The return, the interest rate, the return on interest, you deal with the investors. Okay, so you tell them, put the money in my company, it will be good. If you are a public company, for example, you don't ask for a lot. You want, that's what I was explaining. So following the type of stakeholder, you will need a different level of IRR, and they want it at 10 years or at 20 years, so following the confidence they have in the fact that it will last at least 10 years, it will last at least 20 years. So it's very factual, by the way. For the others, the capacity factors, it is really technical. You have the capacity factor, it is linked to the resource, so to the waves, and to the equipment, and the way they match together. The same equipment does not give the same result in another place. And the same place with another equipment will not give the same capacity factor. Okay, that's that. And then the level of depth, that's just what you can get. When you are investor, you will, let's say, ask for bankers, ask also with aid agencies to get some depth level, and they will say, following the type of project. I can give you an example for the classical wind industry in France. We can leverage some people can leverage 90% of debt. They put 10% in the capital and 90% of that because it is really secure for the future. And they are confident they put the money, you can leverage a lot of debt. So you put a small money and that makes a big project. But with new technologies in new countries, with particular environments, it will lead to less debt. That's because that's the guarantees and the confidence in the sector. So you have many, many different aspects to take into account. I don't know if I... Other questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to, David Simmons, part of the consulting team. I just wanted to respond to this a bit more or less like a question and put out something that Devon raised in the question of, the coupling with the various technologies. I think something we have to understand is that when there are new initiatives like what we're talking about to be explored, the question always becomes, who is going to undertake those activities? Who is going to fund those activities? Now, I don't know whether there's any general assumption that it's going to be funded by government, but usually what happens, whoever is funding the activity or whoever is doing the exploration would want to at least have some sort of an interest in the project. So that then goes into the next phase in terms of how you coupling with what. And whereas there may be a general interest in renewable energy being made available for the countries in general, I don't think we could disassociate it from whoever is undertaking that kind of exploratory activities. But what I want to add here is the understanding that when we're talking about exploring resources in the ocean sector, I don't think that we really come to appreciate the extent to which countries have control over the resources in terms of exploration of resources in that ocean sector. And I would like to just offer a word of caution to governments going forward. Make sure you dot all your I's and all your T's, because under the Law of the Sea Convention, countries have a right to exploit the resources in that ocean sector. And notwithstanding whatever other agreements that they may have as far as feed-in tariff and those things are concerned, when you are producing the resource, I think it gives you an opportunity to set the terms and conditions under which persons can access those resources. So we should look carefully at that going forward. Thanks.
Yes.
Thanks. I just wanted to just give two quick comments. The first is to reiterate the need to broaden the consultation. I know we have a lot of energy people here, but I think it's important, given that we're looking at those two areas, to bring on board the other actors working in the space in terms of in terms of ocean governance, in terms of fisheries, the marine space. I think if we bring them in early, because I think it would have implications for the permitting we spoke about and the regulations. And in this regard, I wanted to just draw reference to two pieces of resources that may be of use to this initiative. The first being the Eastern Caribbean Ocean Governance Policy. This has already emerged as a model for SIDS, for all islands. And I think it would be useful. And they have associated with that a marine spatial planning strategy. So I think that would also provide some guidance and some, initial thoughts in helping to articulate how we move forward with such interventions. So these are available, and I think it'd be good to have a look at it and, see how they can support this initiative.
Thank you a lot. Thank you a lot. By the way, not only the people who are here in the room were contacted before. So Bruno has done 2 missions, one in St. Lucia, another in Antigua. Selina has done another mission in Guadeloupe and Martinique, so that to check and meet with stakeholders, but it's not always possible to see everyone. You know how it is complicated to get a meeting here. So that's the way. We are welcoming every time, let's say, new stakeholders wishing to participate and to give their point of view. That's what Céline was saying. The one knowing let's say, I would say the land, but the one knowing the sea in a territory, that's the people living here. That's not us. So at one point, we bring some knowledge about the technology, the science, the models, and so on. But at one point, we need to speak with people. And that's the point where we are.
Okay. Yeah, I think we'll have to bring this, as much as it is getting quite interesting with the discussion, we'll have to bring to an end because it has now passed the 1 o'clock hour. And I think it's time for us to get some lunch. So, yes, on behalf of the consultant team, let me just thank all the presenters this morning and those of you in the audience who participated in the discussion. We will continue with that discussion in the afternoon. We have 2 roundtable sessions at which some of those issues are going to come back up again, issues we're discussing, the regulatory issues, but also to the whole issue of regional cooperation that was raised, and we'll get an opportunity to discuss that a little bit more. But we want to take a break now to have some lunch and to try to get back here promptly for 2 o'clock. Not asking you to rush your lunch, but I think a 1 hour time frame is good enough to enjoy the lunch, have a little discussion, and get back inside it. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, and looking forward to seeing you back here at 2 o'clock. Thank you. Thank you.